Armen Davoudian is going to read first. And this is his debut book, The Palace of 40 Pillars, which is, it's the book of an outsider. It's a subtle, shimmering book, which is the book of an outsider, an Armenian in Iran, a gay man in Iran, and while he has established himself here, he's got his MFA, going for his PhD at Stanford, it's really more a book of leaving than of arriving. And it has at its heart, I think, a theme of doubleness. The title poem has the palace reflected in a pool. So the 40 pillars are 20 real ones and 20 reflected ones. And doubleness, the epigraph to that poem is, Isfahan is half the world. So we've got halves. We've got a man writing in English when his mother tongue is Persian, and we've got poetry, which is the reflection of the world. So let's give him a warm welcome. Armen Davoudian.
Thank you, Richard, for that lovely. Go ahead.
I'll be your technical
Yeah.
assistant, whatever that means. I'm not sure.
Well, I need a lot of that, so.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you, Joyce, and Poetry Flash. I'm honored to read with my former and forever teacher, John Shoptaw. Okay, let me just time myself. This poem is titled Coming Out of the Shower. I shut my eyes under the scalding stream, scrubbing off last night's dream, when suddenly I hear your voice again, as though it caught in the clogged drain and was sent bubbling back up from the other world where you're not my mother. This time, it's really you. I'm really here. I blink. We do not disappear. Dad left, you say, to shower at the shop, so I don't need to stop just yet. And yet I do, unable to resume old customs, unlike you. In a one-bath, four-person household, we learn what we mustn't see, growing in time so coolly intimate with one another's silhouette behind the opaque frosted shower screen that once more stands between us two. While at the mirror you apply foundation and concealer, I wash out my hair with rosewater shampoo, which means I'll smell like you all day. Mama, I shout, I'm coming out. And as you look away, I knot around me tight your lavender robe de chambre, cinching my waist, and clamber out of the tub, taking care not to step outside the cotton mat and drip on the cracked floor you've polished with such zeal. We are mirrored in each tile. Yet you'd forgive the spillage or forget. What else will you love me despite? This is a poem from the last time Trump was elected, called Something There Is That Doesn't Love, which is half of a line from Robert Frost. We are in Deutsche Camp, which is a tasteless joke my friend with the undercut trolls out of history like a limp goldfish pulled out of its bowl. In fact, we're in Middlebury, Vermont, summer of 14, and I have vowed to unlearn English for 6 weeks so I can get more Rilke and an A. But mostly we play soccer, shirtless against the shirts, and afterwards we screw, as 20-somethings do. We even fall in love, whispering in the dark of the campus graveyard under the sacred oath of German 101. Ich liebe dich, mein Liebling, und ich dich liebe auch. Weekends we go to Ripton to hike the Robert Frost interpretive trail. Yes, there's a wood with a road splitting in it, a pile of timber forever rotting with the burning of decay, for the world will end in fire. And last, the wall. Its faded placard reads, Something there is that doesn't love. It's 2016. All that is history. Now I know Lieben from Leben, but Rilke in German feels like a fish out of water. The president believes good fences make good neighbors. The roads remain divided, undercuts are in. Something that doesn't love burns on the streets again. And again, I guess. According to some tradition, Noah's Ark landed on Mount Ararat, which is currently in Turkey. It used to be in Armenia. This is a poem about that titled Ararat. When I left home, I thought I was the raven, sounding the future for echoes of my voice. Sunlight tore and stitched back sea and heaven, as daily I renewed my prodigal choice. Never, never, I turned my own name over above the raving ocean, content to watch my shadow and my image almost touch once every day, forever and forever. But when did I swap feathers with the dove, coughing up splinters from the olive branch I'll never carry back? The shattered conch of Noah's Ark was dug up from its grave. But this is where I live now. Should I cry? Coo, caw, my house is made of straw. Okay. This is a poem about having breakfast. It's called Wake Up Call. I can see my mother, apron over her nightgown, setting the table for breakfast. A stack of lavash steaming at the center. Honey and milk skin, feta with fruit. Chickpea and chicken mash, dusted with cinnamon. I can see my father, already in his coveralls and cap, filling a cup to the brim with hot tap water and emptying it into another cup, and emptying that cup into another, until all three are warmed for tea. I can hear the kettle whistling and pull the covers tight around my head against the coming light. For any moment now, they will open the door and lift the covers and find that I'm not there. This is another poem about waking up called Obad. Waking to your reflection on the pain, blurred already in the maple's arms, I thought of Orpheus about to look, and Eurydice about to die again, and shut my eyes, letting the night fall back, which brought me suddenly to the young boy up early one fall morning, long ago, fumbling for his glasses, while the world, seen dimly as through tears or through the window of the airplane taking him from home that night, receded more the more he tried to look. As he now vanishes, the moment I open my eyes and find your image too fading away, the day about to break. I'm gonna read two more poems. Okay, these are newer poems. This one is titled 3 Nights. It's morning where I was born, but night unravels here in the Western Hemisphere, reveries of return. Always the same old story, here, there, now, then, love, pain. You'll never go home again. It will always be tomorrow in the country of the past, where a tyrant breaks his fast. There's time yet left to fight. This is the first night. And the night that's only mine, leather, jasmine, and wine, as my face lies abreast the sunset in your chest, or nuzzles your armpit, semen, sweat, and spit. Mullah and Vartabed, my God is in my bed. Majnun and Majnun, let's sleep in until noon. Let flesh block out the light. This is the second night. And at the foot of the bed, the third night rests its head up against his paws. Lel, who defies the laws of Ishq, Amor, romance, like us, a bundle of wants, and wears, like us, no pants, sleeps neutered and alone, may yet live many months, and yet may die today. Let there never be light. This is the final night. Thank you again for being here, and thank you for inviting me to read. It's an honor.
You have more time if you want to take it.
Okay,
You have more time.
I do. My phone died, so I didn't. Well, I was gonna read one more, but maybe I'll read two more.
You have another 10 minutes.
I do?
Yeah.
Okay. My poems tend to be short, and I always
Yeah.
feel like I'm
It's
reading
up to
like 30
you.
poems.
Just what feels comfortable.
Okay.
And
Would you read
complete
Mirror?
to you.
Sure, I would love to, yeah. Mirror. Whose eyes are those that glisten? Listen, behind my darker eyes, cries, whose silent lips that part like fish in that silvered lake ache. Who writes across your page? Age. Who stirs behind your gloss? Loss. Okay, I'm gonna read this last poem. I don't know if you guys have been to the hot springs up in Harbin. It's a clothing optional retreat. This is titled Hot Springs. Afloat out on the starlit water, where life outside is a vague dream, as two figures in a frame, I touch the moon and watch it shatter. But when I touch you, you remain, my body weightless in your arms, as quietly your hand conforms to the gnarled griefs along my spine. Beneath the sky's unseeing eyes, I let my head rest in your palm, making a little world of calm, where those who are lucky can revise scenes too early to recall. The frightened mouth, the soured breast, the abandoned den or splintered nest, resurfaced in the lover's pool. So let our bodies intersect, like children whose fingers cross to make a promise less, and guard each moment from the next. And now, before you disappear, I've brought us once again to soak in sulfur, salt, and arsenic, so that in here, we're always there. Thank you.
Armen Davoudian. Okay, our next reader is John Shoptaw. And this is his new book, his second book, Near Earth Object. He's also going to be reading, I think, a poem from Times Beach, which is his first book. It's there on the table. Near Earth Object is a book of antique, rollicking imagination. I mean, it's about, its basic subject is climate change and the possible doom we're facing, but it's engaged and engaging. And John's imagination it's epic. It's not epic, it's antic. Near Earth Object puts together the asteroid that blew out the dinosaurs with monarch butterflies and John rushing to catch the 79 bus. Hoo-ha! But there we go, we're into it. He opens the book with his friends, the birds, who are disappearing, and he ends the book sailing around the earth. The epigraph is from Ovid, Phaeton, the son of the sun. And Fated in his poem is named Ray. Dig it? And then we sail around the earth, and it's not a happy trip, but it's engaging. And as he crashes into the sun, we enjoy the trip. So let's give him a warm welcome, John Shoptaw.
Thank you, Richard. I will never forget epic antic. I think there should be a word combining both of those. That's just what I need. And I thank you so much, Joyce, for letting me be part of Poetry Flash once again. Some time ago, I read from Times Speech for Poetry Flash. And some time from now, when the history of Berkeley's poetry is written, Poetry Flash will be a real part of it, because it has been. I just say that. This is history. So it is, such as it is. So.
Yeah.
This is the book Times Speech, book on the Mississippi River watershed that I'm going to be reading from. I was raised on the, can someone raise this? Oh wait, I maybe have it.
I'll do it.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, Harold, I know I make things worse.
See, I do things in slow motion, because if I don't, I totally screw up.
Yes.
Just give me 30 seconds.
That's actually the way I live life. I live life in slow motion,
Well,
because
my motto
otherwise.
is, the faster I go, the slower I get. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. I do.
I fuck up.
I
trip
do.
over myself.
There's a Latin motto of make festina lente, make haste slowly. So, I would appreciate it.
Should be good.
Okay, how are you doing? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, good. You know, I was raised in the floodplain of the Mississippi River in an area we called Swampeast, Missouri. And I'm going to read from the opening sequence of poems, which is a hybrid form I came up with, called Blues Haiku. And I hope hearing some of them, you'll get a sense of the blues rhythms, which is very much part of my childhood upbringing, Memphis to New Orleans. I want to blur from a tupelo stump, like a crawfish in an endangered swamp. A purple blur from a tupelo stump, then that crawfish pinching moss off a cypress knee, so standoffish. Ground fog swirling, smelling fresh as death. When the wind disturbs it, ground fog swelling, ammonia smell, fresh as death. Somebody mopping the kitchen, or baking meth. What? This is about an unusual roadkill I drove by in Missouri. What moving violation, unpaid citation, peccadillo, drove you, bandito, from what Amarillo? What crime against nature, peccadillo, so far to the north? Oh, nine-banded tire tread, armadillo. It's one of my favorite big birds of Swampeast, Missouri, the pileated woodpecker. The pileated drummer's walk, it was unignorable that was my song. the drummer's low walk, walk, walk. It was unignorable, and not the sweet, sweet, sweet prothonotari's warble. This is a monocultural corn you may be familiar with. Its tassels writhing, rearing up identically right before a cobra moon. Its tassels writhing, rearing up identically right. The corn drinks in the monotone of an enormous polypipe. Most like a June bug, pointing today out with a splatter on a Honda windshield. Dragonfly or a June bug, pointing its last day with a splatter. First drop of a downpour, about to pound this flat world flatter. I might just walk barefoot down to that moody Mississippi, like a sadhu to the Ganges. I might work my feet into the mud of that mighty Mississippi, in the name of no power in the mud, but the muddy Mississippis. This one I wrote after the BP oil explosion in the Gulf. The towpath to the deep south, it don't feel too well, and it makes me woozy. Towpath to the river mouth, no, it don't feel too well. Laid up with a laughing gull and a brown pelican shell. That lopsided frame house where my mother was born, I would pull it on down. That lopsided house frame where my mom was born, but it'd only be back up early the following morn. You know how blacktops follow rivers. Down an imitative river road in the warbler-inflected breeze. Anything else? The old channel's tree line in the warbler-inflected breeze. Lemon, 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 catfish, and hush puppies. Oh, well, that's some from Blues Haiku. And just, Richard, I think it's a good idea to check in on the birds. This poem for the birds was written partly out of distress for the fact that a study said over the past half century, all North American birds are becoming rarer of all kinds. And also my admiration for Christopher Smart's For My Cat Jeffrey, which you might know every line begins with for. For the birds, for the abundant, along with the rare birds at my feeder of late, for all kinds of birds I've lived with here, are turning rarer. For the chestnut-backed chickadee who carries her sunflower chip to the buckthorn to dine on between her toes. For the chickadees once came to my feeder in bunches. For the big round plain brown pair of California towies who eat in parallel from the bird crumb table. For though they crumb it clean without a glance or a cheep, I believe this remote old couple is as entwined as any two polarized photons. For the fearsome indigo jays, black-hooded and crested, tapper and sly, as I call them. For Tapper taps twice on an overhanging plum branch at 2 clucks from my tongue, so I'll know her. For Sly hangs back and shrieks me over and only shows himself after I place on the table their morning quincunx of unsalted peanuts. For he knows Tapper will quack to announce them and then squawk indignantly when he slyly swoops in for the vast majority. For the dark-eyed juncos, the wide-eyed titmice, the narrow-eyed, red-breasted nuthatches, who feed right side up, as they see it, the other birds upside down. For Audubon's, yellow-rumped, Wilson's, and Townsend's warblers, nobody's birds, who feed, drink, and breed as they can. For the song sparrow's song, and the sparrow who exults in singing it. For a song, how long will that phrase mean what it means? For them all, I refilled the feeder, even this morning, when all blown down things crack underfoot, and the Diablo wind seems to growl diabolically and scrape from all corners at once against a sky the color of flint. For the lesser goldfinches, symbolically fierce, who part their beaks at any other kind who would peck a chip in their presence. For the pine siskins, their symbolic match, who used to expose their underwings back at them with the dreadful yellow stripe. For 2 years running, no siskins at the feeder. For the brown-crowned, as yet unkindled sparrows, wintering from Oregon or the Farallon Islands, I sing my two-note welcome. Hello. Pointless, for they won't learn it with my face masked against wild smoke migrating from the north. For the species too little or big or otherwise unsuited for the feeder. For Anna's hummingbirds, who love to suck on our pineapple sage. For the red-tailed hawk, perched in the smoke-fogged redwood. For soon it'll be pestered by a twister of crows, cawing, hawk, 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 hawk. For a red-tailed hawk, I mistook it, something larger, ruffled, molten. For the golden eagle, it turned out to be weird, hunched in the chill. For another flew up out of thick air and followed it south out of eyeshot. For those two, not migrants, evacuees clasping their emotional baggage. For the birds then, what have I to offer? For what kind of refuge is my catalog? For I can't reckon how to make good their losses. For I meant not to make a life list, I meant for others to partake in my pleasure. For it pleases me to look after the birds. This title poem, as Richard helpfully explained, is a near-Earth object, and it does proceed through a series of admittedly far-fetched similes, which I tend to call dissimiles. Here's the poem. Near-Earth object. Unlike the monarch, though the asteroid also slipped quietly from its colony on its annular migration between Jupiter and Mars, enticed maybe by our planetary pollen, as the monarch by my neighbor's slender-leaved milkweed. Unlike it, even when the fragrant Cretaceous atmosphere meteorized the airborne rock, flaring it into what might have looked to the horrid Triceratops like a monarch ovipositing, had the butterfly begun before the period broke off. Not much like the monarch I met when I rushed out the door for the 79, though the sulfurous dust from the meteoric impact off the Yucatan took flight for all corners of the heavens, much the way the next generation of monarchs took wing from the milkweed for their annual migration to the west of the Yucatan. And their unburdened mother took her final flit up my flagstone walkway, froze, and, hurtling downward, impacted my stunned, peninsular left foot. less like the monarch for all this, the globe-clogging asteroid, than like me, one of my kind, bolting for the bus. This is one of the earlier poems in the book written during the period of drought, tough drought for all of us. It borrows from Chaucer's prologue, and I feel like the wasteland is probably not far behind. Dry song. The drought has pierced to the tan oak root, where the wine tastes like wildfire smoke. It pierces the aquifer with an almond drill, scatters the chances of precipitation with the young sun on the tender crops, and discovers in the lake bed a gold rush town. If I knew the Sierras folded snow on snow, I could find the pass from shut-eye to sleep. But the drought has pierced to the mountain root and shown me rock under the shrunken mantle, and sand it fed to the river mouths, barring salmon on their reds from salmon in the sea. Atmospheric river, radar vapor, damp ghost of the Sacramento. Why only days of speechless blue? Forest numb with riddled pine. And after I experienced an atmospheric river, I was thinking, be careful what you wish for, because I did not know what they really were. This poem is called Vertigo, and it was written in the terrible fire season of 2020, and with, of course, Hitchcock's film in mind. Madeline drove Scotty down the peninsula and parked her green Jaguar at the sunny brink of the Big Basin redwood forest, which makes its own atmosphere like a planet, verdant with fog and giddy with oxygen. They enter in silence its dark, cinematic hush and walk among trees grown to a vertiginous height, stopping before a broad sequoia cross-section with dated growth rings. 1066, Battle of Hastings. 1930, tree cut down. 1958, filming of Vertigo, floats a little beyond the fibrous red bark, like a vapor. Looking at it feels like looking down into an incredibly deep well that perspective narrows into a funnel. This foreshortening of the historical abyss into the present is what film buffs call the Hitchcock zoom, when the camera backs out and zooms in, or zooms out and closes in, so that viewers suddenly become aware of the scene, impinging on or casting off from its focal character. Usually it's hard to see the climate for the days, but an unreal weather event, like the dry lightning storm that shook out her hissing coils over a drought-wrung California, sparking a swarm of wildfires overnight that stunned Big Basin down to the granite. That kind of experience will zoom the overlying climate into focus for a moment and bathe us in an icy astonishment, as though the earth looked around and saw it was the only planet swaddled in habitable gases. But nothing can keep on knowing like that. So the days look up and move on. The smoke turns away from the bay. And tomorrow, they say the weather will be fine. You can tell from Dry Song, I'm interested in prayer. I believe in prayer, praying to any number of things we might need to pray to. I think it's a basic animal impulse. I heard a small great horned owl out my window recently give a distress call, but it was a prayer. It was a prayer to the parents. Where are you? I was reading the Psalms, and I was struck reading them at the flawed nature of the psalmist. I think sometimes in ego poems, narrators tend to be model citizens, and I'm not one, alas. I have a past and sins back there. More to come. A psalm. I'm harping, not to your species, Sequoia, Sempervirens, Titanic, Methuselah, Jurassic, Catcher, Keeper of Carbon, shawled in fog, but to you, redwood, burled double-trunked one, of your kind somebody propagated in our garden, one of a couple planted near our neighbor's house. I'm vocalizing, not a supplicant, but one bending over backwards in your oxygen shower to placate you with my addresses, exhalations unheard but nourishing. I'll never know your canopy up close, like those hummingbirds, thrilling mates with their iridescent plummets, or plucking creamy lichen flakes from your trunks to coat their nests. But I know from down here the dome of your limbs, drooping broadly out from under their overshadowers, then curling sunward. I can't scale you, over 24 of me, but I can shinny my eye up your tannin bark that guards your pulsing sapwood and your heartwood, rot-resistant, though it's already dead. Where aren't you? You wedge your little cones into my lug soles, tangle your needle leaves in my hair, leaves that sip fog, seed clouds, and rain on your roots. We low ones measure lengths of time. Over 4 of me around, you, with your yearly rings and your shallow, wide-spreading, intertwining, unquenchable roots must measure breaths. You drink at our sage and citrus islands, suck our clay pots, wrap and snap our jointed copper roots, heave our flagstones. Your partner hoisted our neighbor's basement. We were transplants like you when they, at the turn of the century, over coffee in our garden, explained that your mate had to go. By my count, it was my age. What I feel 20 years on, when I crawl about its stump to clip another ring of knee-high nursling sprouts, I've been keeping from you. From myself, more like. Not a supplicant, I ask you, just to let me know how long I've got. A narrow breath to you, how long till you let me forget and just enjoy you, if there is any just on earth. I actually have a message out to a plumber as we speak. Guess why? This is the only shaped poem in the book. I've shied away from shaped poems because they tend to feel like prose poems to me, in a shape. But so I tried to make one you could also hear. So I made it in the shape of pangolin scales. This poem's about a pangolin, the most trafficked animal on the planet. Some of you may know Marianne Moore's the poem, The Penguin. You wrote, Miss Moore, about how the pangolin streaming at high night from its stone-lipped burrow, trespassing in Belgian Congo moonlight, gibbous as a bell curve from its paginated tail to its sinuous gummed tongue, prolonged for trickling down ant-slickened trunk crevices, would swirl headlong down the impenetrable drain it makes of itself, melee, penguling, uprolling thing, an involute, inexplicable globe, plate lapping, overlapping, scalloped plate. Only now, Miss Moore, I hate to report, it's plucked like a jungle sop fruit with its prehensile stem and handed off to traffickers who parade it into some high-rolling dining room in Guangdong or in Ho Chi Minh City, where its throat's scissor, steaming at the upscale table as ardent proof of freshness and gratitude to the client whose stimulates the ritual consummation of the handshake deal. Considered a delicacy, an anthropologically delicate phrase you'd have relished, Miss Moore. But why? Nostalgie de la boue? Or a nostalgia to be bush meat eaters, minus the mud, in the wild west of Southeast China, where businessmen mean business? From the black tricorner of my notebook ajar, these armored stanzas gleam expectantly. Yes, Miss Moore, there's more. Olive, tan, and golden brown toenail scales, skinned or worked off living pangolins one by one like artichoke leaves, scales soft at first and milk white on the besotted nursling, riding its mammal's tail like a bath toy, ton upon ton from Malaysia, Indonesia, Zimbabwe, in luggage under timber, red bean sacks, bound for West Berkeley wellness, say, in the mild west of the East Bay, on 7th Street, away from traffic, where maternal practitioners of traditional Chinese medicine, codified by Chairman Mao in the 1950s, invite us over from their homepage window, while visitors positively yelp, and now unsearchable pangolin scales, cool and salty as the Pacific, are administered to promote menstrual flow and lactation. I think since Richard, you mentioned this Ovidian sequence, which I call whoa. That's what Ray says to the horses when he realizes his mistake. He said, back to the stables, which it doesn't work. I found when I was writing this that I started feeling more and more confused, and I had to stop for a few months and write other poems, and I realized that where Ovid was making up his story, we're living ours. And that was the difference. I just couldn't continue. Do you know what I mean with the hexameter epic calm that Ovid could? Okay. This is the 7th poem in the sequence. What I'd give for a swig from the Hippocrene, hiding somewhere up on Mount Helicon, where Pegasus sank his hoof in the water bucked, or even a swallow of arrowhead from the San Bernardino Mountains, bottled in clear, recyclable petroleum plastic. The Metamorphoses looks down on its clueless charioteer, while its mountains and rivers unroll in perpetual hexameters serene as a Chinese hand scroll. I'm not up to it. I have no command over my recalcitrant materials, so far beyond my power to remedy or return to their courses, that despite my getting a feel for my rendition, I know I'm also a petrified writer whose classic vehicle is running out of fluids. It's all I can do to follow the circumnavigation to its downfall in my stamping four-horse verses on a long day when it's always noon. And one last poem that I wrote with my favorite poet, Emily Dickinson, in mind, the poet who wrote, "Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all." After a cricket, hope holds despair as much as despair holds hope. Despair has to keep hope out of mind somewhere, like that fine-toothed strumming I heard over lunch from what couldn't have been a cricket. It was too cold in the fall, too sunny in the day. Hope, hard hope, doesn't tune out, but listens through despair for sounds of life. For the foreseeable century, the climate will gleam on us with a fixed gleam that breaks down anywhere at once, as any expression will if it's held too long. Over lunch the next day, I heard the same sound, so I went outdoors and followed the strumming to what, sure enough, was a cricket, running one forewing down the other, somewhere in the noonday shade of the braided wisteria vine in pod. I felt his strumming deepened the shade he basked in, but I knew he wasn't playing for me, or only to please himself. The next day, nothing. So I went out and I listened to a silence in the shape of a strum. The strummer, I like to think, hadn't given out, but met up with an admirer. His hope would have held. He played like it would never have occurred to him to stop before he was done. Thank you.